Hello and welcome back to IDP Plus Trends with your two co-hosts, Johnny Freaking Fantasy and the IDP tipster, Gary. Welcome back. We are going to talk about Tier 2 edge rushers. Last episode, we touched on Tier 1 edge rushers, so today we're going to move to Tier 2. We have a very good list today, a very fluid list, guys, covering all ages, young mid-20s to even a 30-year-old on this list. So I'm excited to get into it with Gary today. Gary, how you doing tonight, man?
I'm doing great, man. I'm doing great. It's kind of a weird time considering we're right before the Super Bowl. If you guys happen to be catching this a little bit later on in the off season, the Super Bowl's like this weekend, man. So we're super early doing these early tier rankings, man.
Right, absolutely. That's a good point. We're going to come back and touch on these again. So this is just scratching the surface on these free agent edge rushers and all the positions in general. We're just scratching the surface. This is perspective. Obviously, when these free agents land, landscape is going to change their output, and I'm really excited for that. I hate to see change. Everyone hates change, but it's inevitable with some of these guys, and hopefully we give you good information to think about these players looking up next year. And this is this is a dynasty, perspective. So we're not going to look at it from a redraft. We are going to look at it from a dynasty perspective. So there's a lot to talk about. But before we get into that, Gary, I wanted to mention to all our listeners and viewers, if you have not checked out the website Trophy Smack yet, if you coming off a big year, you want to get yourself a trophy. If you won your fantasy league, you're looking at how to invest your money. If you're a commissioner, you want to think about getting one for next year. If you're at a global event, if you're at a work event and you want to buy a trophy, a belt, a ring for work, whatever it is, go to trophysmack.com. Those guys got you covered. They have all your merchandise you need for fantasy and beyond. And I'll throw you a bonus here. When you use the promo code IDP, guys, you will get a free ring with a purchase of a belt or a trophy. So once again, use the promo code IDP, guys, for that free ring when you buy a belt or trophy. With that being said, Gary, we talked about the Super Bowl, man. This is coming up. We're now Tuesday. It's Sunday. So in 5 days here, we're going to have the big game. What do you think? Last episode, we talked about winners and losers. Give me a prop bet, man. I know it's early. We got to see injuries and what the game's looking like. But as of right now, even though being early, what do you think? Well, give me a crazy prop.
Well, maybe not a crazy one, but there's one on DraftKings. It's plus both teams to score plus 25 points. I think it's a feasible idea, considering this is in the dome and these two offenses. I do favor the Chiefs winning. I think they're going to be closer, a little bit over 30. I'm thinking like a 32 to 26, 27, something in that range. But I like that bet. I believe it was like I think it was like a negative 115. But don't quote me on that. You just caught me on the blind side. But yeah, I definitely like that bet on DraftKings.
I do too. I think it's going to be a high scoring game. I hope it is. That's what the fans want, right? That's what we want to see. Mm-hmm. And I like that bet. Now, I'll give you a crazy one. We talked about in our tier 1, we talked about a guy named Chase Young, 24-year-old Chase Young. I don't know. I'm sure it's juice. I'm sure it's plus, might be heavy, but I'd like to see him get half a sack. So I'm going to take Chase Young half a sack at least, half a sack or more. So I think, in spirits of the Super Bowl coming, and like we mentioned, Chase Young, this is a big, big game. Not only it's a Super Bowl, but, he's going to have to play his heart out because he has an upcoming contract, maybe 1-2 years, so lots on the line for him. And if he gets a 1-year deal, next year is going to be a heck of a prove it. So I know things didn't go so well at the home stretch there, regular season for Chase Young, but I like him to have a half a sack. I think there's juice in that. I'm not saying, throw the package at it, but maybe a couple bucks on that, throw it in a parlay. Don't forget about it. Check the odds. So I'm glad we had two good picks there, kind of contrast each other. One's a little bit safer than mine, right? So that was a bold prediction, but we're on here talking crazy stuff anyway with free agents in February. So we might as well add a crazy prop back to the list, right?
Right. Hell, I like it, man. I mean, it's all going to be about the big money, and this is the big game for the off season. So swing big, man. I love it. That's what we do on the underdogs, man. Our first edition, everything's a plus bet. So
I like that. I like
everything's a
that.
big swing.
You can't say I was wrong because the odds weren't in your favor anyway, right? I like to
Right.
play that way. Okay, well, we're going to
Oh,
start
yeah.
talking about our edge two or tier two edge rushers. So we have 6 guys to talk about tonight. If you missed our tier one show, I am going to first off check that out. But at the same time, I'm going to at the bottom of your page right now roll the ticker so you can see the 6 guys from tier one. Now moving into tier two, I know these guys aren't so money in the bank. We had guys like Jonathan Allen and Brian Burns, and you won't get those guys here tonight in our tier two. But what I did is, I took a look at a lot of stats that looking at the end of the year, a lot of stats, whether it be PFFs or fantasy league, stats. And I tried to crunch the numbers because we are talking about IDP dynasty here, right? So you might have seen guys if you did your own research that maybe a good speculative ad in real life, but for me, I want to look at this from a IDP dynasty perspective. So I'm really looking at the fantasy players, right? The fantasy world. So some of these guys might not be the sexiest picks. You might argue that, but that's okay. Every good list is open for interpretation. So we got 6 guys tonight. Like I said, different. We're varying in ages here. We got a couple young guys, got a couple older guys. But let's get into the first guy, Gary, because I'm really excited about this guy. Number one on our list for the second tier is going to be a guy from Miami who had a really good year. He was a special teams guy his first year, then really turned it on over the next 4. This is his 5th year, just finished up his 5th year, and that is Andrew Van Ginkel. I like this guy a lot. Andrew Van Ginkel, he's probably not somebody who you thought when the Dolphins drafted him that he would be a household name, right? But that's kind of what he's come into. Maybe a little bit's due to the injuries that Miami had later in the season. They lost Jalen Phillips. That was a huge blow. That's kind of when he started putting himself on the map. But there were flashes before that, even with Van Ginkel. So to me, this is a really good, really gutsy call. I like Andrew Van Ginkel a lot. And I don't think I'm the only one because he's really put himself on the map this year. We talked about in our last tier, we talked about Danielle Hunter, one of only 2 guys in the league this year to have 80 tackles and over 10 sacks. Andrew Van Ginkel is kind of, to me, I'm going to call him like a poor man's Danielle Hunter in the sense of he's getting sacks, not at the alarming rate, that Hunter is, but at the same time, he does get the tackles too. He gets the flowers, right? To me, you have 42 solo tackles this year. You have 27 assists. That's 69 tackles. That's a good number. Over his 5 years, he's had 250 tackles, so he's averaging about 50 a year. This year went to 70, so that was nice. And one thing about Andrew Van Ginkel is he's not a guy who's out there like we talked about the J.J. Watts, the Max Crosby's playing 80 and over percent of snaps. He's only played 66% of snaps for the Dolphins this year. And like I said, a lot of that came with the injuries to Chubb, to Phillips. So he did kind of be needed on that team. It was nice to see him kind of break out of his shell. And we saw what he can do. 70 tackles on only 66% of snaps, right? 8 tackles for loss. He's had 6 sacks this year. So to me, this is kind of a player that does it all. We talk about leagues that have quarterback hits as a category. 19 quarterback hits this year. In 5 years, he's had 57. So that's over 10 a year. This year, I just want to say he put the pieces together really well. I like Andrew Van Ginkel a lot. I don't know about you, Gary, but when we talk about prospective landing spots, and I don't know that he's going to exactly get re-signed. They have in Miami, what is it? Is it -5 million, something like that, or maybe more? How much they're in the hole there, Miami. But to me, Andrew Van Ginkel, I'm not thinking that they're re-signing this guy. He's earned his praise. He's earned his next contract. Miami's pressed right now. They have big contracts to pay there. They have to restructure with some guys. I just think that Andrew Van Ginkel is on his way out. And that's no, discredit to him and the Dolphins. I think they'd like to resign him. But at the same time, we're living in the real world. This is a business, right? And he's going to probably earn himself a big payday. I think a good team that I could see him with next year. I know Vic Fangio took his talents to Philly, and we talked about a linebacker in our linebackers tiers that was Jerome Baker. Kind of I'm getting the same kind of vibes here. I know they need help in Philadelphia. Maybe they're thinking they need some help on that outside. They had Hassan Reddick kind of have a down year. Maybe they want to go and grab a guy like Van Ginkel. I think that would be a really great, reunion of Fangio and Van Ginkel. I think this would be a great landing spot for not only real life but in fantasy too, because I think that whoever's going to pay him is going to see what they can get in him as out of him as a full time player, right? So I'd like to see the snaps increase. I think productivity increases with that. I'm excited for Van Ginkel, Gary. What about you?
Yeah, he earned a payday, whether or not Miami doesn't have the money to really give him that payday. So I've tracked this guy for years. I believe it was the New Orleans project for 4 years. He's been here. His name's popped up in IDP circles and deep D-Gen leagues for a while, but the Dolphins are ranked 30th in cap, as you have mentioned. And actually, to tell you the truth, man, it's a lot worse than a $5 million type of deal. They got to dump something around $70 million by free agency in March. So that's just to be able to, have the money, from what I understand, to sign their rookie picks. So, and then you got Jermaine Baker, Kristen Wilkins, Zach Siller. They're all starters, man. These guys are key cogs on here. There's not a lot of money. And then in 2025, you got Tua and Waddle. Is it Waddle or
Waddle? Yeah.
Waddle.
It's the Waddle.
All right. That was all right. I was making sure. So Waddle, Dirty O, man, Dirty O. So they've got some decisions to make in the next, weeks. And,
sure.
I think a lot of these guys, if I had to pick from them, I would probably prefer to try to hold on to Christian Wilkinson and Zach Sailor somehow over Jerome Baker. But I don't think Van Winkle will be back here in Miami, considering that you got Bradley Chubb and Jalen Phillips still there. So as far as I'm concerned, Van Winkle's going to get a payday somewhere else. Where that projected could be, I think he projects better as a stand-up outside linebacker myself, than a hand in the dirt defensive end. So other than that, I wouldn't have any preference. The guy earned an elite score out of the blue on PFF all season long, every spurt that he had.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I'm on board here, man. The only thing is knocking him here and why he couldn't be tier one, probably, in your opinion or mine, is the simple fact that there's this big question mark, and he's 28, 29 years old, and it just happened. You're gonna, we got 1 year of shit to look at.
Sure. Yeah, I agree with that, man. It's 28, it's getting into his prime, but at the same time, it's not somebody who's coming out and breaking out 24, right? So there is, hopefully you get a good 2-3 years out of him. 187 tackles over the last 3 years, 10.5 sacks over the last 3 years. This guy's came up big. So Andrew Van Ginkel, he's definitely earned, his pay this offseason. So I'm really excited about him. The next guy we're going to talk about is even older than Van Ginkel, and somebody who maybe you're saying, why is he so low on this list? But I'll get to that in a second. And that's Leonard Williams. Leonard Williams, fun fact about Leonard Williams, since 1930, Leonard Williams is the first player in the NFL to play 18 games, simply because when he was in New York, he missed the bye week. He was traded, and he came to Seattle. They already had their bye week. So a really cool fun fact about Leonard Williams. Tell your friends about that. But he was traded for a 2nd and 5th round pick. I think the 5th round pick maybe next year. And that factors into me because we're talking about him as a free agent. They should resign him, right? Isn't it a bad look to me if they give 2 picks and they use him as a rental essentially? They don't make the play. They have a fizzled season, don't make the playoffs, and that's kind of that's a bad place to leave it. I think they want to prove themselves that, hey, this wasn't just a rental. Maybe they have a extra fire under them to get this guy re-signed. I mean, it's not going to be cheap, but he had a big pay check the last time he got signed. So I think maybe they can get him a little bit cheaper. He's coming up on 30, right? He's 29 years old. So for me, I mean, I like him a lot still. I think, if you're saying I want somebody who's dependable at the end position at edge, he's fine. Don't get me wrong. And he's somebody who's solid. Time will tell you he's solid. I mean, don't go expecting crazy numbers at 28. his highest amount of sacks over his, I want to say, 9-year career is 11 and a half in 2020. So he was, I think, 27 at the time a few years ago, right? So he's not somebody who's going to go out and lead the league in sacks, but he is well rounded, and that's one thing I really like about him is I'm not really trying to take too much risk. If I'm an IDP dynasty manager with somebody that's going to give me all sacks and no tackles, or somebody that just gives me tackles, you want to find a nice blend. And I think that's what Leonard Williams does well. He's also only missed 5 games in his career. Out of 147 possible games, he's played 142. So a little bit of that Iron Man status, right? This year, he had 37 solos and 25 tackles, good for 62 tackles, which is solid. That's Van Ginkel has 69. He has 62. I'm cool with that. I like that number. And as a matter of fact, over his 9 years, he's had upwards of 500 tackles. So he is somebody who is dependable in that category. I think he had one season of over 70. So, that 70 tackles, if you can get that, give me eight to 10 sacks. I'm rocking with you. That's solid DN status, right? So, somebody who's not going to be the most sexiest pick in dynasty, somebody who is dependable and not too old where they're kind of hanging on a thread. So I like him a lot. Still 16 quarterback hits this year, tackles for loss, 10 of them. So I'm cool with that. I think Leonard Williams, I'd like to see him get re-signed. I know they got 2 big, question marks there with Tyler Lockett and Jamal Adams. I don't know if they're going to restructure those guys, let them walk. I think to me, that's their mindset of what they want to do in that category goes a long way for Leonard Williams and what they're going to do for him. But I don't know, Gary. I'd like to see him get re-signed, and I think he has a bounce back year. What about you, Gary? You're on mute.
He's actually one of the best interior defensive lines that I can imagine wanting to have on my football team. So I think it really boils down to the fact that Seattle traded for him, because right now they're not sitting on very much cap at all. So they've got a lot of decisions to make. They got Bobby Wagner might be moving on. He's a free agent. Jordan Brooks. I think it might have been a few of the other fringe guys like Darrell Taylor, rotational type starters. They got Diggs and both Diggs and Love coming up in 2025. So they're going to have to do some adjustments. Now, while I was looking at this real quick, I was just seeing stuff about, possible DK Metcalf trade or something. You got to make some of that cap, cut some of that somewhere. The thing about it is, like I said, they traded for him. And it's not like that they were like super on fire like this. It was this huge, in my eyes, like this huge Super Bowl move, on a playoff run move. I don't think they could have thought that. I suppose maybe they might have. But either way, to make the trade, I think that backs up that they'll find a way to shuffle that paperwork around and probably keep them in Seattle. That's just the logical. That's 9 times out of 10 over the last decade I've been doing this or more, watching contracts. 9 times out of 10, that's usually how it goes. If they invested in them, Now I wouldn't say that in San Francisco's situation with Chase Young at this point, but I think they intentionally just did that for the playoff run. It's a little bit of a Von Miller move, I guess you could say.
Right. Yeah, that's absolutely true. And Leonard Williams, I'm not discrediting here, even though he's in my tier 2. He's just somebody we're talking about in redraft. He's up there, right? You're not worried about 28. He's in his prime, or 29 years old in his prime. So, because we are going through a dynasty perspective here, he's somebody who kind of comes down my list because of the uncertainty too, right? Doesn't always, if you go somewhere else, doesn't mean it's going to be better, right? So I think he resigns here. Yeah, I think it's a great player, and they want to get him back for next year. They don't want to look bad on their trade. So I'm with you on that. Okay, moving into our next guy, and this is a guy who, a lot of people are probably saying, why is he on your list? I haven't heard much of this guy. It's not the sexiest pick, but I want to tell you about a guy in Minnesota that's not Danielle Hunter, and that is DJ Wonnum, who's 26 years old. He was drafted 4 years ago in the 4th round. Had a nice career so far. He's only missed 5 games out of 67. And DJ Wonnum, when you think about Danielle Hunter and what he means to that team, you're probably just maybe scratching the surface on DJ Wonnum. He's a really good player too. He's had 8 sacks this year. It was kind of his breakout year. He also had 62 tackles, which was really nice to see. He was good in the run stop too, run game. So that's nice. I mean, you've got a guy who can get it done. Maybe he takes that next level with sacks next year, and maybe Danielle Hunter gets paid elsewhere, and he has an opportunity to shine. So to me, that's kind of in my mind too. I'm taking that into account. But somebody who just really there's no red flags. He's played the games. He's got the tackles. He's getting the sacks. He's getting better. I really like DJ Wonnum, and I think this is a good name to kind of keep on board. Not a lot of people might know him right now. So I think DJ Wonnum, especially if Danielle Hunter leaves and he stays, I think this could be a good place for him and a really nice landing without having to go anywhere. And one thing I want to say about DJ Wonnum is, you might be thinking like, oh, Danielle Hunter is so much more important, and he really is. He's a great player. Don't get me wrong. I'm going to prefer Danielle Hunter over DJ Wonnum 10 days out of 10. But at the same time, I'll tell you this, Minnesota was in the bottom. I think they were 10th to the last in total sacks from their team, right? And really, when I'm thinking of like DJ Wonnum, you got Danielle Hunter there, I'm like, wow, that's really. I think they would do better in that sense, right? So DJ Wonnum might mean more to this team than most people are giving him credit, right? A team that has one really good edge rusher and one solid edge rusher in Wonnum. One of them probably has to go, and I hate to see it. And maybe they don't take both back. I'm not sure exactly how this one is going to go. He's a lot cheaper than Danielle Hunter, obviously, but DJ Wonnum, I kind of like him, Gary. I think he's flying under the radar here. Do you back me with that?
Well, I think a change of scenery in one or two ways is going to be perfect, and that would be Hunter's probably gone. Look, they're ranked 15th. They only got 30 million cap space. You got Kirk Cousins, Hunter, Cam Akers, Jordan Hicks, amongst others that are free agents this year. And then you're looking at next year, you got Harrison Phillips, which has turned into a beast this past year, Dean Lowry, and Brian Murphy, other defensive starters that happen to come up. You got Justin Jefferson next year as a free agent that you've got to build. I would say if you're going to build off of anybody at this point in time, you would focus on Justin Jefferson. So
yeah,
I love DJ Wonnum actually getting a nice little contract, maybe a 1 or 2 year, or even I don't know about a tag. We'll probably need that for a little something else, but I like him to actually stay in Minnesota. And what I mean by the two different changes, I hope that it would be with Hunter not there, so he gets the opportunity to rush from the blind side or the weak side, where Hunter did most of his dirty work from. So, giving him that opportunity because he has flashed, and he did have a great season this year. He came up. So I could see them holding on to him and just moving him to the other side just to keep him for the next couple of years while they go through whatever the hell they can. That's if they don't get outbid for him, of course, I would say. But
right.
if he goes somewhere else and it's the same situation where he's getting that opportunity to be the main pass rusher, sure, I'm standing up and I'm paying attention.
Yeah, I agree with that. I mean, at least 30 pressures over the last 3 years. DJ Wonnum flying under that radar, but not going to fly under ours. So keep an eye on him. Keep an eye on where he goes, where he lands in free agency. Like we said, they have a really good thing there going. It would be a shame to see them both leave. Hope it doesn't happen. But I like his prospect no matter where he's at. So I think DJ Wonnum's on the up and coming. The next guy I'll give you is going to be a guy who's older. You might question why he's on this list, but I'll tell you why. It's because he still had a great year, and that's Jadeveon Clowney at 30 years old. Jadeveon Clowney, yeah, I get it. He's missed almost 40 games in his career out of 160. That's a little bit of a red flag, but kind of what we came to see out of Jadeveon Clowney maybe puts that at ease, right? That's maybe what we were saying years ago when he was in when he was in Houston, and we saw some injuries there. Like I said, many times that this is a position where guys get hurt, fingers, toe, hamstring, a lot of extremities too, right? Head injuries. It is football after all. So Jadeveon Clowney, but it's nice to see him kind of come into the form where we thought he was going to be when he was drafted originally to the Texans. This year he had a nice year. He had 43 tackles. Again, he's not going to get you 100 tackles. That's not his bread and butter. But even at 30 years old, he still gets it done. He had 9.5 sacks, which matches his career high. He's had over 50 sacks in his career. He's not somebody who's going to give you over 15 tackles, and he's not a TJ Watt. He's not a Max Crosby, but he's definitely somebody who, for 1 year, if I'm in Dynasty, and when we talk about these next two guys on the list, right? DJ Wonnum's a little bit of a question mark, but more like kind of up and coming. Jadeveon Clowney, don't forget about him because he can still give you a good year or two. I'm not sure if it's going to be in Baltimore. I doubt it. But there's and another good caveat about him is when we talk about potential landing spots. I like the kind of reunions, how we talked about Van Ginkel coming back with Fangio. I want to say that I forget the coordinator, but whoever was with the Ravens this year, he ended up going to, I forget where he went.
With the Ravens? Not 100% sure.
I think he went to the Dolphins. He went to Miami. Right? And I think that if Jadeveon Clowney can kind of humble himself and go to Miami, maybe he says like, hey, I can have success there. They're not too far off from a championship. If he doesn't break the bank somewhere for a couple mil, I think Miami might be, looking at Jadeveon Clowney, especially if they got the defensive coordinator from the Ravens there who's found success with him. So to me, that'd be a nice reunion in Miami, and I think he could have a nice year there. Like I said, don't write this guy off yet. I know he's 30. If you're somebody who's looking for those young guys, probably not looking at Jadeveon Clowney. But if you're hurting at defensive end, if you're hurting at the edge spot, I think Jadeveon Clowney can get you a good solid year upcoming. What do you think about that, Gary?
Oh yeah, and I think it'll give Baltimore a little bit of a hometown discount, man. I mean, I think he kind of humbled himself, about the time that he joined Baltimore. I mean, he wants a ring, and I mean, they were on pace to do it. So I don't think he's outpriced himself. Somebody's going to come searching for him. So even if the fact is that the Ravens aren't like overwhelmed with cap space, they're ranked 21st with around 14 million. By the time they would fill out their roster and their class, they would only have 5 mil left. So the notables that they have for free agency this year is Beckham, Patrick Queen. They have their guard, Kevin Zettler.
Kevin Zettler,
yeah. Gus Edwards. Again, you got Patrick Queen. So 2025 doesn't look as bad as what it does this year. But, I mean, it's going to be hard to say. You got I think what's safe about calling him staying in Baltimore is the fact is that, he's a good, solid IDP player. We're talking about a tier 2 free agent in IDP rankings, right? See, we're deep to gens. So you're going to get about where he was this year. I think that's his ceiling going into next year. I do like him better if he stays in Baltimore, to tell you the truth. I'm not sure. He's not worked out so well everywhere else. But, it's not somebody that I normally chase, but so neither is Wonnum, but I do admire him from afar.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, good points there. He was close with Baltimore. Man, if he can't go to Miami, who's going to go to Miami? I mean, they got Chubb, IR probably looking like beginning of the year. They got Phillips, right? We don't see them getting Van Ginkel back. Oh, they're going to miss their shot on Clowney now. Man, they're going to be in trouble there on the defensive line. So I'm going to be interested to see what Miami does here in the next couple weeks. So Jadeveon Clowney, man, if he stays, if he goes, this is somebody who, don't forget about. Don't go drop him yet. Wait it out. He's a great player. He's somebody who can, rush the passer well and make noise, and he gets a lot of quarterback hits. So Jadeveon Clowney, obviously at 30 years old, you're probably going to maybe get a good year or two out of him. That's what you got to go in dynasty mindset and think about, right? But somebody, if you're scraping the barrel and you're weak there, don't forget about him. He's a good player. Very good. We got 2 more players to go. Next guy we're going to talk about is somebody who has big potential, but maybe kind of took a step back this year. Josh Uche from the Patriots. Man, 2022, he had 11.5 sacks. It seemed like he was playing the snaps. All of a sudden, this year, fast forward to this year, he regressed to 3 sacks. That's a red flag, in my book. We're talking about a guy who doesn't, play a lot of first and second down, who's kind of, eager to tuck his ears back and rush the quarterback on third down. Somebody who's a good sack artist. Young too, 25 years old for Uche, and I still like his prospects long term. That's why he's still on my list. I'm rubbed the wrong way just like everybody else, but I still see potential in him. I mean, he's only missed 16 games in his career. He only started 2 games this year. Like I said, it's he's not really playing first and second down. Maybe that was Bill Belichick and coaches kind of experimenting with other schemes. Maybe it was a lack of confidence in Uche. So it's kind of anywhere this can go. But I tell you what, when I talked about what I like to see as far as stats, that's solos, it's the tackles, and that's sacks and quarterback hits, and really in all 3 of those areas this year, he's been a liability. He's only had 15 total tackles this year. That's absolutely not going to cut it, right? He's only had 3 sacks, so he's not hitting in tackles. He's not hitting in sacks. Quarterback hits down to 6 this year. And he's that type of player. He's had 31 sacks in his career, 31 quarterback hits in his 4-year career. He's had 18 and a half sacks in his 4-year career. Somebody who can do it, but just didn't happen for him this year. Gary, do you think that Josh Uche, that they're looking to re-sign him? Do you think that it's a stability, or do you think that they have money there over in New England? They're going to go out and start new and splurge.
I think somebody should sign him if it's not New England, which has plenty. We'll just get it out of the way. They got plenty of cap. They're top, they're only like ranked 3rd or something. They got bunches of money. They set up the new coach Mayo just like perfect. All right. Whatever the hell Belichick does, don't ever try to figure that crap out, man. Him and Dietrich Wise, just prior to this past season, had spurts where they were used. They rotate them in and out. The whole defensive front is just this really big headache. So why all of a sudden he fell out of favor this year after having a very promising 2022? I don't know what to say other than it's the Belichick effect. So I would think, considering that Jared Mayo is, this is the same system he played in with Belichick back, 15 years ago, whatever it is. He's been
Miss him, man. Great player.
Yeah. Yeah, he's been the linebackers coach. Now he's the head coach. I don't expect much to change in how they run things, and at least in their scheming. But hopefully we could see a turn to maybe there's not as much rotation. They actually stick with players in positions. I mean, they do some really oddball stuff. Now I'm talking about from an IDP perspective in this game that we play. In NFL world, those guys are kind of smart. They brought on a whole new thing, and it's kind of formed and gone across. Miami runs a very similar outfit. Denver loves their safety sets. It's the original. Think about it. Think way back, and I'm pretty sure Bill Belichick started the 3 safety sets before anybody else did. All right, if I remember right, back when it was
trendsetter.
So so there's not really anything. We're getting ready to talk about Jennings. I'll cut a little bit shorter, but I'll just mention Kyle Duggar, Trenton Brown, which is a right guard, Hunter Henry, both T's, and Mike Gillespie. But both of them are going to be free, or all of them are free agents this year. The next year you got Juden, Godchecks, and Jonathan Jones, which are some bigger names. These are older guys. They might be moving on from next year. Who knows? Or they'll be cheaper. I don't know. Judon and all of them. I think they're all about 30 now. But as it sits, man, I like them as a deep dart throw. And if any of y'all have heard me before, last year I actually had him as a deep D gem breakout call. Man, it just didn't go nowhere, and I wasn't the only one. All right. There was a few of us faithful. I mean, he had that good of a spurt at the end of 2022. He's got it. I don't know what happened. That Belichick effect, I guess. I don't know.
But I tell you what, man, Gerard Mayo, he's probably happy. He's probably licking his chops like, oh, yeah, this guy didn't, he didn't have a career year. He's not going to go chase the bag. He knows the system. He's a younger guy, right? They have older guys, but they kind of maybe need him for the future. I don't know. Like you said, it was your breakout guy. I mean, this guy has massive potential. He had a solid year last year. I think that, he's not going to get the contract that he thinks he deserves, right? And they bring him back. So, yeah, I like him to return there too, hoping for his sake that he is able to at least get one more year there and show that your breakout,
Right.
wasn't all for naught, right?
Yep.
Yeah, I like him a lot, man. And keeping in mind here, we're going to go back to Gary mentioned Jennings. We're going to go back to another for our last guy we're going to talk about in tier 2. We're going to talk about another Patriot, and that is Anfernee Jennings. And that's somebody who, when I threw this list together, I'm asking Gary, I'm like, Gary, what do you think about that Jennings pick, right? Because he's not really talked about that much. But me, I'm a savvy guy in IDP. I'm looking at the tackles from all perspectives. And I found this guy early on, right? I was ready to pick him up in like a 2 linebacker league. I mean, I had really good faith in him, and rightfully so. I mean, the tackles are there, man. Somebody who doesn't set the world on fire as far as sacks. He only had 1.5 this year in 3 years played. He's only had 3 total sacks, so that's 1 a year, right? He's not going to really rush the passer and get it done in that sense, but somebody who's great in rush defense. And how great? He's actually ranked 5th out of all edge rushers with an 86 run grade. So run defense grade. That's great. And that's what I'm going to talk about is just his ability to stop the run, help in the run defense. I mean, outside backer, but he had 66 tackles. And I don't think this guy really tapped his potential. I mean, it's kind of like he got some flashes in the pan there, but the snap share wasn't bad. It was 67%. I'm thinking like, man, if he could get up to 80%, I mean, we talked about the Daniil Hunter having over 10 sacks and 80 sacks. I don't think that's what we're going to get with Jennings. I don't think it'll ever be, but maybe another poor man's kind of guy. I mean, when I'm thinking of back in the day, I'm a Pittsburgh guy myself, Gary, and I remember a guy playing the game like a James Harrison, somebody at the outside backer position. I want to say he hit, I think twice he hit over 100 tackles and 10 sacks, right? So outside backers can get it done. I mean, kind of tides have changed in the way of NFL is playing these outside linebackers. But Anfernee Jennings, for somebody who's not putting his hand in the dirt and going and rushing the passer every play, like I think he can get it done. He might not have to get the sacks in order to be fantasy relevant. He's definitely a sleeper right now. 66 tackles this year. That's something to write home about. That's something to be excited about. That's actually more tackles than the second and third guy on our list, Williams and Wonnum. So Anfernee Jennings, I'm not going to say he's going to lead the league in sacks ever. He's somebody he's modest in quarterback hits even. He only had 4 quarterback hits this whole year and 9 to his name in the NFL. So over 3 years, we haven't got a huge sample size, and this seemed to be his coming out party. It's tough to grade his first 2 years. He really wasn't getting the snap share to be talked about, right, to have any faith in. But he is definitely somebody who I think, has earned a nice contract somewhere else. And I'm excited to see what teams do their homework on Jennings, because if it's not the Patriots that bring him back and somebody gives him a deal, I think they're going to get a steal here, Gary. To me, this is like somebody on my list. One of these 6 guys is going to be like, it could be the next guy. Right now, I'm thinking Anfernee Jennings is my next breakout. Am I right? Am I wrong? What do you think?
I have to agree, and I don't think that the Patriots let him walk. I think that he's got to be a priority for them. I mean, he was actually their best overall guy on paper, most consistent in IDP when we're looking or lacking a lot of consistency there, and he did it with just part-time snaps, and it's just that Belichick thing. It never made any sense. I think he was consistently getting around the 60% of snaps, but even that will falter at times. But he still managed to produce. So I love the guy. I noticed him after the first couple of weeks. I think I had him on my start-sit charts and in my waiver wire apps to my the readers, and helping them out, getting him off the waiver wire in deeper degen leagues a little earlier. So I love this guy, and I'm going to be very interested wherever he may land, but I got a feeling he's going to be a priority for me.
Yeah, I think so too, man. I mean, he's under the radar. I don't think he really, is somebody who has a lot of love in the free agency market. He hit 5 tackles 6 times this year, right? So somebody who gives a nice floor in that regard. I think the arrow only points up for Jennings. Hopefully he stays there, and they prove loyal to each other, and he has another great year. They could use him there, right? So, man, I'm excited to see where he goes. And he's somebody who's definitely not being undrafted in my leagues next year. What do you say?
Yeah. Oh, yeah, man. Don't tell everybody.
Well, that's my sleeper of tonight in this tier 2 rankings. Next week, I'm glad you came with us tonight. You watched tier 2. We are going to move into defensive backs next week. So we're going to post this video the same time next week, and looking forward to crunching the numbers and seeing what we come up with for our next episode. Thank you very much to everyone who tuned in, whether it be, if you're on YouTube, if you're on Spotify, if you're just listening on your way home. Thank you very much for tuning in with us tonight. If you have any crazy ideas, any comments, if I'm wrong, if you like what I said, if you like what Gary said, drop it in the comments. It's always nice to get some reactions out of people. And like I said, this is 2 tiers of free agent edge rushers. We're talking dynasty perspective. Everyone's coming with a different mindset. So this is mine. I'm glad you got to hear me and Gary tonight. Thanks for tuning in. We look forward to seeing you soon on our next episode about free agent defensive backs. Thank you, and you have a great week.
Thank you for watching this IDP Guys video. If you like this content and you want more fantasy football content, click here. If you enjoyed this video and you want to see more videos to help you master your IDP league, click here to subscribe.